Welcome to Design Downtime, the podcast where we celebrate the joys of living a balanced creative life. I'm your host, Guy Siegel, a design director in Toronto, Canada, and I invite you to join me on this journey as we redefine what it means to be a successful design professional. Let's break free from the shackles of hustle culture and embrace the full spectrum of human experience, because life is too precious to be spent only in pursuit of productivity. Today, I'm thrilled to talk to Jenny Dee Brecheisen. Jenny is a UI engineer on Cloudflare's UI platform team, where she works across front-end UI, systems, and engineering infrastructure. Beginning with a degree in graphic design and early work in print and marketing, she later moved into product design and design systems before transitioning into engineering, bringing a cross-disciplinary perspective to building products in the age of AI. Her work today spans everything from front-end development and accessibility to migrations, debugging, and improving how software gets built and maintained at scale. When she's not working, she spends her time barrel racing and investing in futurity horse prospects. Jenny, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Guy.
It's a pleasure. You want to talk about something that I know absolutely nothing about, which is barrel racing.
Barrel racing is taking a horse as fast as you can around 3 50-gallon barrels in a cloverleaf pattern, and the fastest time wins. So it's essentially glorified horse gambling, betting, on yourself. So, and it's really fun. It's very much an adrenaline, get your heart racing kind of thing, but also developing that relationship with your equine partners. So if horse girls out there know about that kind of relationship you can have, and then it kind of becomes a full-on lifestyle and you get deeper and deeper into it in the avenue you decide to go into.
So let's start at the beginning. I'd like to start with the origin story. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so this is kind of funny. And, I know you've had people who like video games and people who like New Orleans on the show and stuff like that. And it kind of stemmed from during COVID, my husband and we decided to move to New Orleans to be able to buy some land, right? Or live somewhere where we could have a more rural kind of lifestyle. And that was heavily influenced by playing the video game Red Dead Redemption, because there's that city, Saint Denis, which is very much like New Orleans, and you have your horse and all that. But even prior to that, I grew up in New Mexico in a very rural place, and all my friends had horses, but I never had a horse. So we end up in New Orleans in 2021, and the prospect of being able to own a horse coming from San Francisco, where it's not very viable, became a reality. And so what am I going to do with a horse? Well, I had been watching Yellowstone and saw barrel racers on there. So I'm heavily influenced by a plethora of weird things. Being an adult learner with my first horse lessons and all that, I found a small little community that taught you how to barrel race, and they hosted play day shows. So that's how it started. And now I have 3 horses and a pony, and my horses range from 8 years old. I have a 5-year-old who's in her futurity year right now, and I have a 1-year-old stud colt prospect who will be going into futurity. So I've kind of gone down the deep end of the futurity path. I have participated in a couple rodeos, but I'm not a rodeo participant necessarily. I'm not a member of the WPRA, which is the Women's Professional Rodeo Association, but I am 2 feet into the futurity side of barrel racing.
This is another term that I was not familiar with. Futurity. What is that?
Yeah, so I was not either, and it's taken a few years to get my bearings around it. So I've had a horse for coming on 4 years now, so it's taken me 4 years to get to this level. Futurities aren't necessarily only for barrel racing. Other disciplines have futurities, and what that is a horse at the beginning of its prospect year typically starts at 3 years old, and they've got like a 2-year period to be in this futurity window. So trainers of whatever the discipline are prepare the horses to compete at the highest level as young as they are put into competition at. So it's, a chance for the trainers to shine and show what they can do. It's a chance for the stallion owners to show their offspring are very amazing competitors. And then every year there's a new batch of futurity horses because the lines continue, and every year there's a new crop of foals born. So if your futurity colt doesn't have a outstanding 3, 4, or 5-year-old year, that doesn't mean that they can't go on to be still a great barrel horse or whatever discipline they're in. You can have a career into late teens as well as, if you're go down the rodeo fork. But, futurity and rodeo aside, there's plenty of just people who enjoy the sport, get together in their areas. There's an organization called the National Barrel Horse Association, who has chapters. And so in your chapter, there'll be jackpots, and any age of participants, any age of horse can all compete there. So there's little niches of barrel racing, and then there's like open to the public type backyard participant, if you want to call it.
You mentioned a few things that I'm really curious about. You said if the horse does not go into that, they can still be a good barrel horse. What is the difference? What makes a horse a good barrel horse, for example?
You need a fast horse because it is a timed event. So much like racing on a track, fastest horse wins. So your horse needs to be fast. And I would guess maybe I'd call out a difference between a track horse or a thoroughbred horse. Barrel horses are traditionally quarter horses, American quarter horses, which are more so known for their compact muscular builds and to be fast at short sprinting distances versus long hauls like you might see horses in the Kentucky Derby. And then to add on to the speed element, barrel horses are more bred for, you'll get a horse that is really fast in a turn because it's not just direct straight lines. You have to come around these barrels really fast. And turning like that doesn't come really naturally for a horse. You kind of have to get that through genetics and training it into them. So you want a fast horse that turns really well and kind of picks that up naturally. And that comes with ease because you can teach it any horse to barrel race, but will they be good at it and excel and be at that top? Because it comes down to hundredths or thousandths of a second in some of these races. So, we're splitting hairs over here, but that's what it takes to have that top winner.
How do you train a horse to do that or to be a good barrel horse?
I am not a horse trainer, and I don't ever imagine myself to be one. Like I said, I was pretty green. I was totally green getting into this. Green just means new and inexperienced. So I've found trainers to help me learn along the way by taking lessons and clinics and whatnot. But I rely on horse trainers, and my trainer lives in the Mecca of barrel racing, which is North Texas. So my 5-year-old mare is currently with her now at the Royal Crown Futurity, which is happening, which is really exciting for me because it's her first year. It's her debut being showcased. So I rely on the training route to teach her the skills for that. And training really is about repetition. Just like any person learning something like an instrument, okay, music is ear and listening, but it's a lot of muscle memory. So it's slow work, showing the horse where to put their feet exactly around the pattern. And you'll have a horse in training. At their 2-year-old year, they start what they call getting broke, which just means getting used to a saddle, getting used to a person on you, getting used to just the basic communication of go forward, stop, move left to right, like how to move your body. So a horse will do that kind of training for, 9 months, close to a year, depending on a horse, maybe sometimes less or more. But then futurity's training starts their 3-year-old year. So they get a long time to do it. And in the case of my mare, she had extra time, which is a choice of owner and trainer and how the horse goes. But I got her off the track. So she was originally a quarter horse on a round track for racing. And she's bred to be more traditionally raced on that kind of track. So we're taking our time, and her body and conformation maybe doesn't lean to her being the best barrel horse, but we're working towards her getting there.
Okay.
All the stuff you wanted to know about barrel racing.
No, this is perfect. I'm learning so much.
But it's consumed my life. Yeah, it has.
You did grow up around people who had horses. What sort of role did horses play, if any, in your life growing up?
Yeah, so I grew up south of Albuquerque in New Mexico. It's pretty rural out there, farming communities. So you had working working horses, working cows, or ranch horses, stuff like that. So when I was young, I had friends who had horses, and we would just, go on trail rides on them down the neighborhoods and stuff like that. So that's an activity I still enjoy doing with my horses. I like my horses to have what they like, say they have other jobs. They're not just one trick ponies. And I think that helps round them out more. And they like doing stuff and going places. And I think it makes for a better horse when you can take them out on a trail and they don't spook and get scared of other things. But yeah, growing up, I think a lot of young girls, they have or see horses and they really want a horse. And, that doesn't usually die, but they can be an expensive pet, if not a hobby. And so as a grown adult amateur, I get to choose what I want to get into. And that's what I choose to spend my time and money on.
And do you own your horses?
Yes. Yeah. So it went from 1 to 4 relatively quick. I've got, I think I said 8 earlier, but he's a 9-year-old gelding. His name's King. His registered name is King of Firewater. Registered names are a big thing. You can tell a lot by their name, usually by their lineage. And he's my heart horse. He's like my baby. I love him so much. And then my second horse was my mare, and her name's Pearl. Her registered name is Come Together, and she's off the track. She had 5 or 4 starts, and she's in North Texas right now with our trainer Kelsey McNamee. And I had to get a pony because my horse was then lonely without having her, their herd. So you want to, if you can afford and have the space to have them have a herd, you get more. And then Kelsey also participates in breeding and raising other people's horses. She's a trainer, has like over 20 there to train herself. So I got this yearling prospect late last year, and he's a 1-year-old, and he's got some good breeding. He's out of a great sire, Trace Says, who's and the Goodbye Lane, who's lineage is the last NFR, the gelding by the Goodbye Lane one. So Trace Says and Goodbye Lane are like the top 2 stallion sires out there right now. So we're real hopeful of him for when he comes to his 3-year-old futurity year.
Your horses, are they, because I know some people have stables where they rent space in stables. Are your horses with you, or are they at a stable somewhere?
I started out stabling. I used to, up until late last year, I lived in New Orleans. So I really enjoyed Jeremy's podcast about New Orleans earlier this year. Stabling a horse for one is pretty manageable financially, but when you start thinking about getting more and more and more, like I said, it's taken over my whole life. So we bought 10 acres the end of last year, an hour north of New Orleans, and now I have them at home, and I have a barn, and we just got our perimeter fencing up, and we just cleared the land and seeded it to grow pasture grass to put them out on. So yeah, that's how I've changed since the pandemic. It's come a crazy long way, all for the horses and gambling on barrel racing.
So tell me about this gambling on barrel racing. Something I did not know existed until 20 minutes ago.
Well, no one actually calls it that, but essentially you pay money to enter yourself into a race. So it's horse racing. You're betting on yourself, really. That's how I like to joke about it. So, at the local jackpots, an entry fee might be $50 to if you have a side pot for a high stakes, it could be up to another $100, right? And then you can win upwards of $1,000 if you pull in the top speed. And then some of these futurities, the entry fees are closer to $500 or can be over $1,000, or those are the low stakes futurities that I'm now getting used to. But I know I won't go too deep into it because I don't know it a lot, but there's like slot owners, and those slots cost thousands of dollars. So it's kind of like a choose your own adventure based on your tax bracket, what you can get into with some of this stuff. But yeah, I feel like, you're either betting on yourself as you jockey the horses. Like I ride and compete locally. I have competed some in North Texas on my gelding, but mostly I work with my trainer and have her jockey my horses. So I'm invested in them competing and hopefully winning. And then any winnings, if we do place, her and I split. That's pretty standard. The owner and the rider and the breeder can all split money at these futurities. So people who invest in breeding the stallions and advertising them also are incentivized to get good foals in the ground to compete because they'll get some of their money if they win.
And you said some races you jockey yourself and some others the trainer does. What do you prefer? Do you like the rush of the competition?
Yeah, that's funny because one time I was speaking with a friend. I was like, I didn't really consider myself an adrenaline junkie, but you gotta be somewhat kind of crazy to get on a horse running that fast. And then, they slow down so abruptly to go around these barrels 3 times. And it feels like, even when you start out slow, it feels like you're going Mach 10, right? And so you don't get out there in the beginning and go as fast as you see the professionals doing. It takes you a long time to get your skill up to be able to do that. And that's part of the fun, is like you're always trying to improve your last time or get a little bit better than the last time you were out. 1% improvement, like any time you ride, is a great thing to strive for. So the thrill of it, it's really exciting. And, you spend so much time preparing, training, or practicing yourself or your horse. And the time that you are taking to compete is anywhere between like 14 to 17 seconds of thrill, right? So it's a lot of effort for a very little output and glory. And the other thing, aside, maybe they're related, aside from it being like pretty thrilling, is it's also very nerve-wracking and you get filled with such anxiety. And I've compared it in my past. It's like singing on a stage and performing or group speaking. It's very nerve-wracking and nervous. And, horses are so attuned creatures, and you're sitting on their back. They can feel that and they get excited and they get amped up. And barrel horses have a kind of a negative connotation about them, that they're all kind of blown up and uncontrollable, but they're also just getting super pumped and like prepared to just run as fast as they can around these 3 trash cans. And it's pretty exciting. And I love it. It's a weird, sometimes I think about it and I'm like, what am I doing? And it doesn't really matter. I find a lot of joy in it. And I love the animals. I love the people that I've met through it. I've formed some really great friendships. I love where I live now and the lifestyle I have. And that's all because of horses and getting just head over head flowing into this kind of like crazy world of barrel racing.
What's your sort of regiment of taking care of the horses?
Yeah, so that's, daily work, and it's a lot of fun. They I can see them right outside my window out the back door, and I have Ring cameras on them. You wake up in the morning, they have a feeding schedule. You always make sure they have hay and give them alfalfa, and like some, people are on the spectrum of what kind of supplements they give their horse, and people are very opinionated about that, so I won't go into that. But you feed your horse essentially breakfast and dinner around the same time. You have to clean their stalls out every day or twice a day. I'm lucky enough here that mine are turned out on the land, so they can move about freely or come into the stall if they want. I feel like they have a pretty good life there. They've got companionship in the herd. But yeah, otherwise, aside from just day-to-day checking on them, visiting with them, taking them a carrot, because that's the fun part, taking them a carrot or peppermint. Ideally, I ride between 3 to 5 times a week, just to keep them kind of exercised and up to baseline. And that can be a stroll around the neighborhood, a trail ride. A trail ride doesn't have to be, you packing up and going out to the hills, going on a trail. Just, getting out down the safe road is nice. And I've got an area here where I can practice walking over poles, or, I have a barrel set up here, but I don't do speed work here. I just, do slow work or ground work and hand work. And honestly, I think that a lot of what I spend my time doing with my horses is just hanging out with them and being with them in the pasture. there are a lot of people out there in groups that there's even equine therapy. So I find a lot of just sense of calming and happiness in just being with the horses. They're great and healing animals. And I think that really also increases the bond and the trust that you have with them when you do go to compete with them. One thing I've found, my gelding, who I've had the longest, and he's a little older, I trust him completely with me and my husband and anybody who you'd want to put on him. That comes with him being a little older, but also our bond. And my mare, who's 5, I don't have that trust with her yet. She's a little bit younger. I haven't spent as much time with her, but you can definitely get to that point where you feel that bond get stronger over time. And I think that's another thing that's addicting about them is they're all different. They all have different personalities, and you can't really compare them to like dogs. They won't like necessarily come up and wag at you when you come home. But if you slow down and meet them where they're at, that's, I think, where it really shines in the relationship you can have with them.
You mentioned that you're not an adrenaline junkie. What's the potential for things to go wrong in this sport?
Yeah, it's very high. The futurity my trainer's at right now, I was watching the live stream, and one of her close friends had a wreck, and the horse fell over her on the barrel and broke her leg. I was at a jackpot not too long ago where a young girl fell off and had her foot stuck into the stirrup and was dragged a little bit by the horse and had some traumatic brain injury there. She's recovering. It's a 1,000 to 1,200 pound animal going very fast, and lots of things can happen. They can spook at things. They're preyed on out in the wild, so they're not the apex predator, right? They run from things and they get scared. And people always say, you should wear a helmet, but the majority of people don't. You're wearing your cowboy hat when you've got a dress code event or whatever. But yeah, it's highly likely in any equine sport that there's a chance for you to get injured, just at the nature of if it's a speed event, the size of your animal and the height from where you're sitting to the ground. I haven't had any injuries yet, thank you, knock on wood, but it's very likely that at any time anybody could get pretty seriously hurt.
I'd love to hear more about the community around bear racing. You mentioned a bit about that. Tell me more.
Well, one curious thing, I guess, that I don't know if it ties into a lot of the community so much, but one curious thing that people may not know about horses in general, and which maybe leads to you forming bonds with the community of horse people, is a lot of things you take for granted for a smaller animal, right? You take them to the vet for almost anything. They get shots there or whatever. And I've learned having a horse, and maybe I don't think it's because of where I live or I'm too rural. I've learned to give IV shots, give medication, like you do all that stuff yourself, because if you had a vet come out to you all the time, it's just like, it just doesn't happen. So, and being how I was amateur adult getting into this, like there's a bar of so much information that I don't know. So you really kind of need people to learn from, to talk to, because like I said, you don't always call the vet for these small things. You need to learn how to do it from your trainer, how to get into a feed, like what your feeding program might be. The people out there who go through it and have been around the block a time or two can really help newer people get accustomed to what the norms are, because you come into it new and you think everything's an emergency, and they're like, no, put this around Fluffy's leg and like give him a shot of something in the vein in the neck and that'll be fine. I was pretty shocked getting into all that, and then just the amount of stuff and information you need to know when you take on a horse. Just a baseline to keep them alive and like care for them is very great. So you develop your friends, and just like design taste or anything else, people hold their opinions pretty strong on the spectrum from one end to the other of what they do or don't do or believe in or don't believe in and subscribe to. And everybody likes to throw their opinions at you. And in the beginning, you kind of have to sort and filter through all that and develop your own taste and what what you believe in and things you subscribe to and how you want to care for your horses and what works for you and doesn't work for you. And you kind of gravitate to people who are like-minded, like in a lot of other things. So you develop really strong friendships that you can call and do the events with, call if you need help or advice, or, you haul together to events. That's always fun to not have to go to these things by yourself, because it's a lot of sitting around and waiting for your 15 seconds while you're nervous as heck and stressed out. So it's fun to have friends that you can depend on and enjoy the sport with.
What's next for you in this? Do you see are you growing into different areas? What's happening there?
I have a long-term plan. So I am a 44-year-old adult, get into this a little older. I want to participate and jockey as long as I can. There's NFR qualifying women who have been doing this sport way into their 60s or 70s. So as long as my body is willing and able, I want to keep enjoying performing myself. When my yearling stud colt is of age, I really would like to breed him to my mare and have full out a baby at my own property to experience like all these facets of life stages, and then raise that young baby to see if they're good enough to go into the futurities. So I've kind of got like my 5 and 10 year plans mapped out, and then I'll reevaluate and see what might be next. But I've told myself and my husband that until that baby, I don't have the means financially or space for any more horses. So I need to cut myself off.
Fair enough. Jenny, where can people find you?
Yeah, so I've got my portfolio with work I've done, and what I'm kind of doing is at tinycrowbar.com. I don't know why, besides my last name means crowbar, and that's been my handle, my URL since I graduated school. So Tiny Crowbar, and I also developed a barrel racing app to track your times. You could use it for other events as well, but that is called highloper.com. So that was a fun little foray, my first foray kind of into vibe coding. So yeah, Tiny Crowbar or Highloper.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I can't wait to hear all the new episodes that come out with all these interesting people and their crazy hobbies.
And now you're amongst them.
Yes. Thank you.
This is all for this episode of Design Downtime. Thank you for joining me. And until next time, I hope you enjoy your downtime.